Top 5 Japanese crimes that were erased from history. Part 1. The disappearance at Kamata Station. You've heard of unsolved murders, urban legends, and serial killers. But what if I told you some of the most disturbing crimes in Japan were deliberately erased from public record? Not forgotten, erased. Wiped clean. Hidden like rot beneath a polished floor. Tonight, we dig into the first of 5. A mystery so chilling it was buried beneath layers of silence. This is the disappearance at Kamata Station. It started like any other day in Tokyo. Kamata Station was its usual blur of motion. White shirt salarymen, schoolgirls with bobbing backpacks, the metallic screech of trains arriving and departing every few minutes. The date was November 11th, 2003, a rainy Tuesday morning. That's when Emiko Shiraishi, a 23-year-old nursing student, vanished. She had messaged her roommate at 7:58 a.m. Train's delayed. We'll be back by 8 tonight. Can you reheat the curry? That was the last anyone heard from her. The surveillance footage from that day showed Emiko entering the station through the south gate at precisely 8:09 a.m. She stood on platform 2 for the Kianahoko line, scrolling through her phone, umbrella dripping beside her. Then something inexplicable happened. The timestamp flickered. 8 hours, 12 minutes, and 7 seconds. 8 hours, 12 minutes, and 8 seconds. 8 hours, 12 minutes, and 10 seconds. No 8 horas, 12 minutos y 9 segundos. A second missing. A flicker of distortion. And in that instant, Emiko was gone. Vanished. Mid-frame. No exit. No departure. She didn't jump. No one approached her. There was no train leaving or arriving. She was simply there, and then she wasn't. Her case was filed as a low-level missing persons report. That was the first red flag. Normally, the Tokyo Metro Police are extremely thorough, especially with young women, but Emiko's file was strangely thin. No appeals were made. No press coverage. Her family, originally from Hokkaido, reported getting strange calls at night with nothing but heavy breathing and faint static. After 2 weeks, her parents traveled to Tokyo. They claimed that when they visited Kamata Station, the station master refused to acknowledge Emiko's case, insisting no such incident occurred here. When her mother tried to hand over flyers with her daughter's face, police appeared and escorted them off the premises. That's when the whispers started. According to a retired train conductor named Masaru Hayashi, Kamata Station has an underground subplatform decommissioned since the 1970s. It was once used during the Cold War as an emergency evacuation route and storage area. Masaru, who drank too much sake and said too much in online forums, claimed he saw men in black suits and white gloves escorting someone down a maintenance stairwell in the days following Emiko's disappearance. They weren't cops. They didn't have badges. And they weren't Japanese, he typed. Foreign shoes. Leather gloves. Smelled like bleach and ozone. His account was deleted within 24 hours. So was his profile. When other users tried to archive the forum thread, the entire domain was shut down. 3 months later, Masaru was found dead in his apartment in Kawasaki. Cause of death, self-inflicted cranial trauma. The detail left out of the official report. His tongue had been removed and left folded neatly on his desk, placed on top of a train ticket to Kamata Station. It was only when a university student named Riku Tanaka began digging into urban legends for his thesis that more details resurfaced. Riku obtained a leaked audio file, allegedly recovered from a corrupted drive belonging to station staff. The file was only 4 seconds long, but impossible to forget. A burst of static, a high-pitched mechanical whine, a woman's voice, Emiko's voice, screaming the words, "Don't let it take my face." Then a wet tearing sound like skin ripping, Riku uploaded the file to a private Discord group. The next morning, he was found in his dorm, alive but unresponsive. His eyes were wide open, pupils fully dilated, and he was muttering the same 3 words over and over. The empty platform. He was committed to a psychiatric hospital in Chiba. To this day, he has not spoken again. His parents pulled his Discord history, but the file was gone. All members of the group were banned. Even backups failed. It was like the recording never existed. Independent investigators attempted to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, the record surrounding the Kamada incident. But Japan's National Public Safety Commission issued a statement calling the request non-applicable. They said there was no evidence such a person ever attended Kamada Station that day. However, digital footprints don't lie. Emiko's Suica card pinged on entry. Her phone connected briefly to station Wi-Fi. Facial recognition from a nearby vending machine confirmed her presence. And yet, no exit logs. No phone location past 812. It's as if she was absorbed by the station itself. More disturbingly, Emiko wasn't the first. Archived reports show similar disappearances in 1987, 1991, and 1999, all of them young women. All of them last seen entering Kamada Station on rainy mornings. Each case was quietly closed, with vague notes like left the country or runaway suspected. Families claimed otherwise. When overlaid, the dates form a 9-year pattern. The next due? 2003, Emiko's year. The next one after that? 2012. And there was another disappearance that year, a middle schooler named Aiko Watanabe. She too was never found. Guess where she was last seen? Kamada Station. Platform 2. Most people who pass through Kamada Station feel nothing. Just another stop on the way home. But those who stop on Platform 2 for longer than 5 minutes on a rainy day, some report seeing movement in the reflection of the train windows. Some hear whispers under the tracks. A few say the shadows behind the vending machines don't line up with their owners. And once in a while, just once, someone looks away from their phone and realizes they're alone. Not a soul in sight. The lights flicker, and a second later, they're gone. Like they were never there at all. Part 2. The Feast of the Morio in Nagano Prefecture. When we think of crime, we imagine motive, evidence, and justice. But some crimes in Japan were so dark, so inexplicably grotesque, that they were buried beneath folklore and silence. Tonight, we travel deep into the mountainous villages of Nagano Prefecture, where something ancient awoke in 1982 and an entire community paid the price. This is the Feast of the Morio. There's a small, isolated village in Nagano that you won't find on any modern map. The locals call it Torigami, though even that name has mostly vanished from public record. The surrounding mountains, the dense pine forest, the mist that never fully lifts, it creates a timeless sense of dread, as if the land itself doesn't want to be disturbed. The story begins in February 1982, when a government census team was dispatched to assess unregistered settlements for integration. The lead investigator, Kenji Okamoto, was a veteran bureaucrat, rational, procedural, grounded. But what he documented in his personal notebook would never make it into the official report. Kenji's team consisted of 5 people. Within 2 weeks of entering Torigami, only 2 made it back. Kenji was one of them. The other, a junior assistant named Aya Morimoto, hanged herself in a government dormitory 3 days after returning. Kenji disappeared from public life shortly after filing a heavily redacted report. Years later, his daughter discovered a sealed journal in the back of an old filing cabinet, hidden behind a false drawer. It detailed the village's purification rituals, their unusual dietary customs, and their obsessive hatred of mirrors. Most chilling of all were the last few pages, hastily scrawled in pen and stained with dried blood. They call him Morio. Not yokai, not kami, something older. They feed at the bones, not the meat, never the meat. I'll watch them open a child's back like a book. Villagers of Toragami believed that every 9th winter, the spirit of the mountain would grow hungry. To satisfy it, they performed a ritual called the Kakatsu no Yu, the Night of Hollow Bones. Here's how the ritual went. 1. A villager was chosen, usually a child. 2. They were starved for 9 days, then bathed in boiling herbs. 3. Once the hallucinations began, they were taken to a shrine in the forest. 4. Every bone in their body was removed, painfully, methodically, without killing them immediately. 5. The meat was offered to the villagers. 6. The bones were ground into powder and burned at the foot of the mountain. It was believed that the mountain spirit, the Morio, only consumed what was hollow and clean. Kenji wrote that he witnessed a ritual in progress. He had wandered away from camp at night, led by a faint chiming bell and the sound of a child's laughter. What he stumbled upon was something so profoundly inhuman, he could barely describe it. A pale, eyeless figure crouched over a child, unhinging its jaw wider than should be possible. The child's body twitched, not yet dead. 2 villagers in ceremonial masks were chanting, slicing without hesitation, as if butchering livestock. When Kenji made a noise, they all stopped. The creature didn't flee. It sniffed the air, slowly turning toward him, and smiled. When Aya returned, she had deep scratch marks along her inner arms and thighs, self-inflicted, according to the doctors. She spoke little, often staring at blank walls and whispering about bones in the wallpaper. Her suicide wasn't traditional. She hung herself facing the mirror, a Shinto taboo. She had painted her lips black and carved something into her own cheeks, 2 spiral patterns, intersecting under each eye. A nearby note simply read, "Don't reflect it." Security footage of the dorm hallway caught a disturbing detail. For 10 minutes before her death, Aya's room door opened and closed by itself over and over. No one ever entered. But on a final frame before the camera malfunctioned, there's a brief image, a tall shadow with too many arms. The authorities blamed it on equipment error. A conspiracy forum known as Junet obtained satellite imagery from an old Cold War reconnaissance map. There, deep within the woods of Nagano, were the decayed remains of a shrine structure. Wooden torii collapsed, ash covering the ground like snow. Urban explorers who sought it out described hearing a bell long before they reached it. One explorer, YouTuber at Akumadive, uploaded a now-deleted video titled Nagano Shrine Bones Found. The footage showed animal bones, goat, dog, and something human-like, arranged in spirals around pit. At the 3:14 timestamp, the camera shifts on its own. No one's holding it. The wind grows loud, and in the distance, something white and hairless peeks around a tree, then vanishes in a blink. The video was removed within hours. Akumadive posted once more, an apology, and then deleted his account. He hasn't been seen since. Despite the bizarre evidence, Toragami no longer exists in official registries. Even local authorities deny it was ever part of Nagano Prefecture. Old maps pre-1983 show a small settlement. Modern ones don't. Census logs? Missing. Property records? Redacted. Postal routes? Skipped. One anonymous whistleblower from the Ministry of Internal Affairs admitted that a deep cultural cleansing took place during the early 80s. Villages with strong animist rituals were quietly absorbed or erased, especially those with pre-Shinto practices. When asked about Torigami, he simply said, "We don't speak that name. It was made to forget." Even now, hikers in Nagano report hearing bells at night in the woods. Some find bone spirals etched in moss. Others claim to see mirrors nailed to trees, cracked just slightly, facing away from any path. One trail runner named Natsuko told a reporter in 2018, "I looked into a puddle and saw a second version of me, smiling, even though I wasn't. The reflection reached out. I ran until I threw up." The legend of the Morio may be buried beneath bureaucracy and time, but it's still out there, waiting for the next feast. They said this forest was cursed, but what they didn't say was that it drinks memories, that it swallows time. In 1986, 5 hikers vanished without a trace in a region where clocks stop and voices whisper from the trees. This is the third forgotten case, and it might be the most terrifying of all. Part 3. The Vanishing at Narukami Ridge. In the early spring of 1986, a group of 5 university students from Hokkaido disappeared during a hiking trip to the remote Narukami Ridge, a mountainous stretch north of the Kushiro Marshes, largely unmarked on modern maps. The official report was thin, presumed dead due to weather conditions and terrain. But those who lived in the nearby town of Onikawa knew better. They never referred to Narukami Ridge by name. They called it Ubazakura, the old crone's blossom, and no one who went past its southern boundary ever came back saying, the 5 students, Kaido, Yumi, Riku, Mari, and June, had all studied folklore and anthropology. Obsessed with tracing forgotten legends, they discovered an obscure 17th century scroll referencing the Blooming Gate, a hidden spot where the dead whisper and time unravels. According to old accounts, a shrine built to seal something had once existed in those hills, but the location had long been lost to nature and denial. The group arrived in early April, ignoring the frantic warnings of Onikawa's aging locals. One woman even threw salt at them. Another murmured, "The mountain doesn't kill. It remembers." By the 3rd day, they began to document oddities. Kaido's wristwatch stopped at precisely 1:39 p.m. and never restarted. Their compasses spun wildly. Riku claimed he heard singing from the treetops, soft, feminine, lullaby-like. They found crude effigies made of bone and string hanging from trees, and Mari photographed ancient carvings etched into boulders that resembled kanji, but didn't match any known language. Yumi began having vivid dreams of drowning in black mud, a woman's long arms pulling her downward. She told the group she didn't want to go any farther. But the others were determined, especially June, who was enthralled with the idea of proving that Narukami Ridge housed the lost Blooming Gate. They reached what they believed was the original shrine on day 4, half buried under vines and moss. The structure was nothing more than a stone circle surrounding a central altar, now cracked in half. Strange that the plants surrounding it were all completely dead. No bersang, no wind stirred. June, foolish and reckless, placed his hand on the altar and whispered something no one could understand. Kaido later said he felt the mountain breathe at that moment. That night, everything changed. The forest moved. Trees rearranged themselves. Trails vanished. Their GPS devices, already barely working, now simply blinked error. Riku vanished first, gone from his sleeping bag without a sound. His shoes remained neatly placed beside the fire. The next morning, the group tried to retrace their steps, but kept returning to the same spot. It was as if the mountain had looped them in a circle. Mari grew paranoid and accused Kaido of switching things around in the night. Her lips were dry and cracked, and she kept muttering about the woman with no eyes. On the 6th night, Mari attacked June. She screamed that he had opened the door and that it couldn't be closed. Kaido pulled her off, but not before she bit June's neck so hard it bled. She ran off into the trees, shrieking, and her screams were swallowed by silence. Then came the whispering. It wasn't wind. It was language soft, fluid, and wet. They heard it circling their tent. Yumi, shaking and pale, said the whispers were saying her name. June, in a feverish state, began drawing the same symbol over and over, a flower with a spiral center and 10 jagged petals. Kaido recognized it from the scroll they had found, the blossom that feeds on memory. By the 7th morning, Yumi was gone. No footprints, no disturbance. Her backpack was zipped untouched. The only thing left was a small blossom on her pillow, a pale gray flower with veins like bruises. Kaido and June were all that remained. Yun barely spoke. He just stared into the trees, repeating the phrase, "She's almost bloomed. She's almost bloomed." That night, he walked into the woods, naked. Kaido didn't try to stop him. The rescue team found Kaido 3 days later, dehydrated and barely alive, near a dried-up stream. He was clutching a strip of fabric that didn't match any of their clothes. When questioned, he couldn't recall how long he'd been there, or who he was with. He claimed the names Riku and Yumi sounded unfamiliar, though he had photos of them in his pocket. The investigation was closed quickly. The mountain was declared hazardous. The area around Narukami Ridge was sealed off for military weather research, and the surviving student, Kaido Suda, vanished from public record 2 years later. But here's the twist. In 2014, a team of geologists scanned the region for seismic activity. One of the underground scans revealed an anomaly, a chamber beneath Narukami Ridge that resembled a giant flower with spiral tendrils extending for miles. It emitted faint EM pulses, enough to interfere with compasses and electronics. The geologists never went back. Their report was buried under layers of bureaucratic classification. But a whistleblower leaked a photo, a close-up scan showing 5 faint heat signatures inside the chamber, shaped like curled, fetal human bodies. 5 students entered the ridge. 1 came back, but maybe none of them ever truly left. In 1971, a Tokyo elementary school conducted a psychological experiment on its own students. What began as simple isolation exercises spiraled into mass hysteria, hallucinations, and ultimately, a sealed basement where 10 children were locked away, never seen again. This is the 4th forgotten atrocity, and it's the one that screams when no one's listening. Part 4. The basement of Class 3B. Yamato Elementary wasn't special. A simple concrete block of a school nestled in the Nerima district of Tokyo, it was known more for its declining attendance than academic excellence. But in 1971, under the direction of a radical new headmaster named Shigeru Ito, the school conducted a secretive education reform experiment, one that never made the papers, yet traumatized an entire generation of children. The experiment, on paper, was designed to test the effects of prolonged isolation on cognitive development, a form of sensory deprivation training. But the faculty knew there was more. Ito had reportedly studied obscure methods of psychological conditioning, some dating back to Imperial Army programs used in prisoner interrogation. Class 3B was chosen. 10 students, all between 8 and 9 years old, were selected at random. Parents were told their children would be participating in a gifted pilot program. Signed waivers. Consent obtained. But once the classroom doors were shut, the truth began. Each child was led down to the school's subbasement, a concrete bunker originally built as a bomb shelter during the war. No windows, no clocks, fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying flies. They were separated into 5 mirrored pairs and placed into opposite ends of the underground facility. They were told it was part of a game. A voice echoed through intercoms, "Stay in your space. Observe. Learn. The one who understands will go home." But nothing ever made sense. Each cell was equipped with a speaker that broadcasted random noises, sometimes cries, sometimes whispers, sometimes static. Lights flickered without pattern. Food was provided, but irregularly. And the only visual stimulus was a single image projected on the wall once every 24 hours. A grainy photograph of a classroom filled with faceless children. On day 3, one of the girls, Kana, began screaming about the hallway. The staff checked her recording room, but found no signs of intrusion. Still, she kept describing a tall boy with long arms and no jaw who waved at her from the dark. Her screams stopped on day 5. The next time a camera showed her room, she was sitting still, staring at the wall, mouthing something silently over and over again. Her eyes looked stretched, too wide. Another boy, Taro, began communicating with someone in the wall. He wrote hundreds of messages in crayon, most of them illegible. One was clear: "I won't listen to it anymore. Make it stop scratching." By day 7, he had torn out 2 of his fingernails and jammed them into the speaker. The signal never stopped. The faculty became concerned, but Ito insisted the experiment continue. He wanted to see them bloom. He claimed they were near the threshold, that only by breaking the barrier of comfort could true consciousness emerge. On day 10, one of the mirrored cells was found empty, both children gone. Security footage showed static for 17 minutes. When it returned, only strange markings remained, scratched into the floor, resembling rows of teeth. Panic rippled through the staff. A janitor refused to return to the basement after hearing children laughing from the drain. A teacher reportedly had a breakdown, clawing at her face and screaming that she had seen the hollow bell. Finally, on day 12, authorities intervened. Parents had begun to protest. Rumors had leaked, claims of psychological abuse and missing children. When police arrived, the basement was sealed. Cameras removed. But Ito was gone, and so were the children. Of the 10, only one was ever found again, a boy named Osamu. He was discovered months later, wandering the train tunnels beneath Narama Station, barefoot and covered in soot. He didn't speak, not at first. When he finally did, all he would say was, "The classroom is still breathing." He was institutionalized shortly after. The school closed within a year. The building was demolished in 1975, but here's where it gets truly disturbing. In 2009, construction workers unearthed a rusted, sealed hatch beneath the foundations of a new apartment complex on the same land. It took 3 days to open it. Inside was a concrete hallway, its walls etched with drawings, childlike scrawls of faces, all featureless. In the final room, investigators found 10 small chairs arranged in a circle, each had a school uniform folded neatly on top. And on the back wall, in black crayon, the words, "Class is never over." The media was silenced. The hatch was resealed. Officials declared it an unused storm shelter with no connection to the school. But residents of the apartment complex have since reported hearing muffled tapping beneath the floorboards, always in groups of 10. To this day, the name Shigeru Ito has vanished from employment records. No known photographs of the man exist. But in 2021, a teacher in Chiba received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a photo, an old black and white shot of a classroom. Children seated, all of them facing forward, all of them faceless. And at the back of the room, barely visible in the shadow, a tall figure wearing a teacher's uniform, arms too long, standing in the corner, watching. In 1986, a small psychiatric ward deep in the Japanese countryside was closed overnight without explanation. Official records were scrubbed, staff disappeared, and the patients, 33 in total, were never accounted for. What happened inside the Namahara Asylum was so disturbing, even local authorities refused to speak of it. But fragments of truth remain, and they tell a story of human experimentation, spiritual madness, and something much, much older than science. Part 5. The Namahara Asylum Experiments. Nestled in the remote mountains of the Aomori Prefecture stood the Namahara Psychiatric Center, a brutalist structure with narrow hallways and barred windows that constantly wept from the rain. It was designed to be a final stop for patients deemed untreatable by other institutions. The asylum's last year of operation, 1986 was its darkest. A new medical director had arrived that spring. His name was Dr. Sota Kuroda, a neurologist from Tokyo who had studied ancient Buddhist texts alongside neuroscience. According to recovered fragments of journal entries, Dr. Kuroda believed that madness was a veil, a symptom of spiritual contamination, and that by tapping into a patient's insanity, one could reach what he called the first mind. The idea, ancient consciousness predating language, identity, even humanity. And within this first mind were truths no sane mind could process. Kuroda began his work quietly. He converted an unused wing of the asylum into what he called the reflection ward. All windows were covered in mirrors. Rooms were lit only by flickering lanterns. The first 5 patients admitted to this area were selected for their extreme dissociative conditions. Each had a tendency to speak in other voices or claim memories that weren't theirs. But Kuroda wasn't treating them. He was feeding them. Recordings later uncovered from a discarded reel-to-reel player captured the sessions. In one, Kuroda calmly instructs a patient to listen to the mirror. The patient sobs, repeating over and over, "I can see her behind my eyes." Moments later, screaming. Then silence. Over the course of 4 months, staff members reported bizarre phenomena in and around the asylum. Reflections that didn't match the person. Patients walking into rooms seconds before entering them. Mirrors vibrating as if humming. One nurse, after accidentally entering the reflection ward, scratched her eyes out with a plastic fork. When restrained, she whispered in a different voice, "It wears me now." Rumors spread of patients being left in mirrored rooms for days, forced to confront distorted images of themselves, some of which began moving independently. One orderly, Jun Takahashi, claimed to have seen a patient melt through a wall of mirrors. He was found catatonic days later, gripping a shard of glass inscribed with the phrase, "I dream in silver." As staff began to quit or vanish, a nurse named Mizuki uncovered Kuroda's handwritten notes. They were unhinged, diagrams of spirals drawn over human skulls, references to the 33 faces, mentions of a ritual from the Edo period used to suppress spirits believed to possess entire communities. One passage stood out. "We were not the first to build minds. The old ones made minds of mirrors. I only showed them their reflection." Then came the night of October 12th, 1986. The asylum went silent. Every light turned off at once. The emergency line rang, but no voice answered. When local police arrived, they found the building abandoned. No signs of struggle, but something had changed. All 33 patient rooms were open. Each bed was stripped. The hallways were covered in shattered mirrors. And at the center of the reflection ward, in a room that did not appear on blueprints, was a massive, octagonal mirror, standing upright, splashed with blood. But there was no blood trail, no footprints, just a single tape recorder lying at its base. The final recording. Male voice, raspy, trembling. "The first mind is here. We reached it. It saw us and showed us itself. It remembers everything. It's not behind the glass anymore." Pause. Whispers in background. "It walks now." All records of Namahara Asylum were wiped. The land was sold, and a forest reclamation project erased every trace. But in 2014, a hiker exploring the area found something chilling. A mirror, half buried in mud, standing upright in the middle of the woods. A mirror with no reflection. When he took a photo, the image showed a hallway, long, endless, filled with flickering lights, and a man staring at him through the glass, even though no one stood behind him. The hiker posted the photo online. Within 12 hours, his account was deleted. The mirror was gone the next day. These 5 atrocities, the forbidden footage from Fukuoka, the phantom of Aokigahara's rail line, the basement of Class 3B, and now the reflection ward of Namahara, share a single thread. Someone always tried to open a door, and something always answered. But ask yourself this. If these crimes were erased from public record, what else have they hidden? What else is scratching at the edges of our memory, trying to return?